All right, good afternoon, everyone. We'll call this regular council meeting to order on January 10th at 4 o'clock. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelethat on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. We have no late items this afternoon. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I will so move.
Councillor Hoare, and a seconder. Councillor Mafty. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed and carried. We have one delegation today. Marcy DeWitt from Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network regarding a summary of the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network activities and resources, and an introduction for the new councillors and an invitation to 2023 activities. There she is. Welcome. Please try and limit your presentation to 10 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will just get over to my presentation and share my screen for you. And there we go. So thank you for having me here today. As a couple of you know, on a regular basis annually, the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network reaches out to all the municipal leadership tables in order to give a quick overview of the activities of the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network. And this year, with so many new councillors and leadership positions in our region, we're excited to be welcoming you and giving a quick overview of what the health network has to offer in the Alberni-Clayoquot region. So my name is Marcy DeWitt. I've been the coordinator for the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network for the past 8 years. We work with the 3 municipalities, 10 Nuu-Chah-Nulth nations, and 6 electoral areas in the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District. So working very closely with the Alberni Valley, West Coast, and Barclay communities. Quick little bit of history. We were formed in 2011 when Island Health went to the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District in order to look at some of our major health indexes that were not doing so well. So at that time, we were formed in order to take a closer look at some of the health indexes in our region, primarily around respiratory challenges and cardiac events. And a number of other health networks were formed from that time forward. So Mount Waddington was the first health network to be formed in 2005 with some advocacy. Alberni-Clayoquot and the Cowichan Regional District joined in about 2009, 2011. And since then, we've been pleased to welcome health networks across the island. So most regional districts on Vancouver Island have a health network hosted through their regional districts, and we have funding on an ongoing basis from Island Health, which funds our coordination positions. So we did a little bit of forming between 2011 and 2014, and since 2015, so for the past 8 years, we've been working forward on our strategic planning and working very closely with communities around the social determinants of health. So those things that are related to health in our communities, but not directly tied to the health system, acute health system. So our kind of basic structure, our governance structure, as I mentioned, we're hosted through the regional district. They are our fiscal host and provide a wealth of connections into the political cycle as well. We are a network, so we do not have a formal legal status as a society. But we have a something like a board. It's called our table of partners, and this is our leadership table who are responsible for sitting down and making decisions with us. Our 2020 table of partners membership and representation is listed below. Those individuals are tasked with bringing forward information from their communities, as well as assisting us with making good decisions that benefit the whole region when we're looking at healthy communities. In order to perform some work, we do have action tables, which we either convene or connect with in order to move forward work. And I think that the one that the District of Ucluelet has been most active in would be our West Coast Transportation Action Table. Utilizing those to bring together specific members of the community to move forward priority areas, which I'll get into in just a second. So we are still working from our 2018 strategic plan, which will be renewed in this next coming work plan. So we'll be looking at a 2023-2024 strategic plan. But for the time being, our 4 priority areas are network development, and that is our internal governance and outreach into communities. Community connectedness, which includes work around transportation and increasing access to health and health equity in our region. Building regional prosperity, which is in relation to poverty reduction. And knowledge and capacity building, which is a kind of one of our more our looser bucket priority area, where we have the ability to work with communities on emergent needs. And right now we are hosting a large youth initiative, which I'll get into. So building our building regional prosperity. As I mentioned, this is very much focused on poverty reduction. And in 2022, we completed and began presenting around the poverty reduction strategy for the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network. Here you have some screenshots from that report. This is the executive summary. Pulling forward 4 recommendation areas around income, housing, mental health, and health interventions, and building equity in our region. That plan and all of the information around our poverty reduction initiatives is available in more detail on our websites. And I'm always happy to send reports of these reports and action plans that we've completed along to council as well. Connected Communities, as I mentioned, is a transportation primarily initiative, but also can encompass areas where we're looking at connecting people to health and wellness programs within community, not just transportation based. But through this priority area, we host the West Coast Transportation Working Group. We collaborate with the ACRD on West Coast and regional transit consultations and planning. And we've worked very closely with community stakeholders to bring them into planning processes for better transit systems in the Port Alberni area as well. So on our website, you'll also find links to the reports around transportation in the region. And there's a screenshot here of a transportation assets map that we launched, I think it was in 2018, to detail just the challenges of traveling from rural and remote communities into other areas in order to access health services. So this we used as a advocacy tool in securing many of the transit programs that are now in flux at this moment. Knowledge and capacity building, as I mentioned, this is our catch-all area in which we participate in a lot of networking of networks, ensuring that different networks within our region are communicating well, and that we have that ability to assist in connecting with resources, connecting them with resources. So there's a list of some of the networks that we do connect with on a regular basis. We do a lot of work around systems change and bringing up policy items, both provincially and nationally, through a number of other networks and communities of practice. We also work with the other health networks from across the island in order to better coordinate island-wide services and again, bring up some of those priorities that are felt throughout our communities into a bigger avenue. So AVICC, the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, is one area where we're often present and bringing up some of these priorities. Our biggest project right at the moment around the knowledge and capacity building priority is our Communities Building Youth Futures project. And so this is funded through the Tamarack Institute with funding from the federal government. And we have a great facilitation team with a community youth facilitator in each sub-region of the Alberni-Clayoquot. So that includes the Alberni Valley, the Barclay communities, as well as the West Coast communities. So your very own youth facilitator or coordinator for your youth room, Tony Buston, is our facilitator for this project as well. And these facilitators are tasked with working with youth to identify priorities and move forward these projects in meaningful ways that are very much youth-led. And so the youth have identified priorities around belonging and support, mental health and addictions, as well as connections to land. And here you'll see a snapshot from the 2020 Coming Together Forum, where West Coast youth identified their top areas of priority, being sexual health, primary care and mental health, connecting to land, the need for safe spaces, more recreation support, and substance use support. So in the next year, a couple things to look out for. Again, opportunities to connect with the Communities Building Youth Futures. I know that all of our community youth facilitators are planning to come to council with their youth leadership teams so that you can hear a little bit about what youth in your community would like to see. There is also opportunity at any time to connect with our youth facilitator and engage with youth in other ways. We will be looking into the UBCM poverty reduction stream 2 of funding. The first stream funded our regional action plan for poverty reduction. And we will be looking at an application around equity enhancing contents. And this will include potentially training for municipal leaders around equity and what that means in terms of policy and moving forward projects. So we're looking for interest and finding out what kinds of information councils are looking for in that area. We also have a spring network gathering for the community health networks on Vancouver Island. So we will be pulling people together in order to introduce the community-wide or Vancouver Island-wide community health networks and have an opportunity to plan forward throughout the Vancouver Island area. So there's a variety of different ways that you can get in touch with us. Here you have my email and our website. I've also starred a couple areas on our website snapshot here. This would be a snapshot of our main page. So you can find more information about us up at this yellow star here at About ACHN. That has all of our governance documents. And our work tab includes information on transportation, poverty reduction, as well as knowledge and capacity building. So thank you again for having me here today. And please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Marcy. That was great. Any questions from council? I have one. The networking opportunities that are coming up, will they be virtual or live or combination?
The Vancouver Island Community Health Network gathering, we are aiming to have a live event, but we will be investigating depending on the venue that we secure. We haven't quite decided on venue yet, but that could have some hybrid options.
Great, thank you. And is this something that you've done every year? Are these community sort of gatherings?
The Vancouver Island wide? Yes. So post-pandemic, we did have an annual gathering every year. During the pandemic, we had one. It was a little bit more challenging to organize our 2020, but we did host a gathering in 2021.
Great, thank you. Okay, I don't think the other councillors have any questions, so thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there are 3 bylaws today. The first bylaw, item 5.1, is zoning amendment bylaw number 1312, 221 Monado Road. This report is presented by the Director of Community Planning. Would you like to give us your report, Mr. Gregg?
Certainly, through the mayor. Thank you. Zoning amendment bylaw number 1312. This is for housing development. Council will recall it's a roughly 212 unit housing development at 221 Monado Road. The bylaw received first and second reading. Sorry, I'm getting signals about the sound here. Is that better, Julian? Okay. The bylaw received first and second reading in early June and was the subject of a public hearing on June 28th. And then later received third reading on June 29th, and council had indicated that final adoption would be subject to registering a restrictive covenant on the title of the property to ensure that the future phases of this development, or the future sort of steps, would fall into place as had been proposed. That this is the zoning amendment for this proposed development, but there's as council will recall, quite a few steps of development permits, subdivision, building permits for the phases of the housing. And so attached as Appendix B to the report is the restrictive covenant, which essentially lays out all of those pieces as they've been proposed. That has now been registered on the title of the property. So essentially council is now in a position to consider adopting the zoning bylaw piece of the puzzle, if you will. The public hearing has been closed, so this isn't a time or an opportunity for more public input or discussion, but certainly if council has any questions, we will find answers for you. So I'll just maybe leave it there and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Questions from council? We're a quiet bunch today. Okay, I see that there is a staff recommendation. Would council like to make a motion?
I will move that council adopts District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1312, 2022 to facilitate the proposed housing development on the property at 221 Monado Road.
Thank you, Councillor Hoare.
Second.
Second from Councillor Kennington. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. Thank you. Looking forward to this development. Thanks for coming, Chris. Yes. The next bylaw item is item 5.2, zoning amendment bylaw number 1319, 1683 Larch Road. This report is also provided by the Director of Community Planning. Mr. Gregg.
One moment.
The mayor, there's 3 pieces really to this. This was an application. Sorry, getting the sound signal.
Sorry, I have to recuse myself.
Oh, sure.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I'll start again with better sound, hopefully this time. So this is zoning amendment bylaw number 1319 for a proposed development at 1683 Larch Road. That council gave first reading to the bylaw, and it's now at the point of considering third reading and adoption of the zoning bylaw. Also, there was a development variance permit and a development permit associated, so there's a number of motions being recommended to council. You'll recall this was for proposed development. This is a property on Larch Road that has an existing building that would be converted to 4 new multifamily residential units, plus they're proposing a new building with 4 other units, which could be long-term multifamily residential or resort condo. And the variance is for the width of the parking, access aisle. So really, there isn't a covenant, unlike the previous application, associated with this. So really, council could consider third reading and adoption, having already had a public hearing in December. So really, there's sort of those 3 pieces of the bylaw and the 2 permits that council could consider today. I'll see if there's any questions.
Any questions from council? Councillor Hoare?
I'm still a little concerned about, where the garbage is going on the site. But I know that this is something that'll get sorted out as we move forward, because that does need to be dealt with development of this size, I would think.
Mr. Gregg, any comments?
There are some different options, partly whether it is being operated, the 2 buildings, one long-term versus short-term, but there are a couple of options on site. One of the things is the new building, the 4 new units each have garages. So if they were individual homes, they could be simply a roll-out bin kept in their garage. But I believe there's been discussions actually between 2 neighboring property owners about sort of combining their bins. And so that's something that certainly at the building permit stage, we need to have an answer. For one thing, if it is a separate enclosure, then we see details of the screening of that and whatnot. So that can be handled as it goes further.
That was my understanding. But given the variance deals with the width of an aisle, I know that garbage trucks can't make that turn, and which is why I understand they've done the neighborly thing. I just wanted to make sure it was on the table.
It is on our radar. Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Mafty?
Yeah, I wasn't present at this meeting, and just for my own edification, I'm wondering if I can get a little bit of clarification on the specifics of what might have been discussed regarding the in the consideration that they would be long-term the new development would be long-term housing or resort condo uses. What was the rationale, and how would that choice ultimately come to pass?
Mr. Gregg?
Through the mayor, what I can offer is that part of this is a balance of what is the existing zoning would allow for that resort condo development. What they're proposing is creating one of the building where the 4 new units would be multifamily long-term, certainly, and then they have the flexibility of the new building that's being constructed. It would be up to the owners whether they chose to use it as a home or whether they wish to use it for the resort condo, which is currently a permitted use. So it would be sort of half of the 8 total units on site would be for sure long-term housing, and the other half could be either long-term or short-term. It's sort of the balance that's being proposed.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? I see there is a recommendation. Would council like to make a motion?
All right.
Councillor Hoare?
I will move that council, with regard to the proposed redevelopment of the property at 1683 Larch Road, 1, give third reading to District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1319/2022. Are we doing them separately or together?
I think they can all be done together. Is that correct, Mr. Gregg?
No, Joey.
My understanding is it never hurts to do them separately.
Okay.
All right.
Can we have a seconder for that? Councillor Anderson. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, so that carries.
I will move that council, with regard to the proposed development of the property at 1683 Larch Road, adopt District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1319/2022.
And can I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Mafty. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That passes.
And I will move that council, with regard to the proposed redevelopment of the property at 1683 Larch Road, authorize the Director of Community Planning to execute and issue Development Variance Permit 22-07.
And a seconder? Councillor Anderson. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
And I will move that council, with regard to the proposed redevelopment of the property at 1683 Larch Road, authorize the Director of Community Planning to execute and issue Development Permit 22-19.
And a seconder? Councillor Mafty. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries. Welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry, that was a little. I was like, I gotta get out of here.
The last bylaw is item 5.3, zoning amendment bylaw number 1320-327, Passive Melfort. This report is also provided by the Director of Community Planning, Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, and through the mayor. This zoning amendment bylaw is for the property at 327 Passive Melfort. As council recall, the request is really a site-specific change to enable a proposed 31 square meter or 336 square foot addition to the existing house on the property. The bylaw had received first and second reading in November. It was subject to a public hearing on December 13th. And there is no covenant associated or conditions with this, so really council is in a position to consider third reading and potentially adoption of the bylaw at this point. And I'll see if there are any questions that we can answer for council.
Any questions on this one from council? No, I see there is a recommendation. Would council like to make a motion?
Two-parter or one part?
Two parts.
Okay.
We don't have Joey here to advise.
I motion that council give third reading to District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1320-2022. And I would motion that council.
We'll do them separately.
Okay.
Okay, so a seconder on that one? Councillor Mafty. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries. And go ahead.
And I will motion that council adopt District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1720 and 2022.
That's not what I have here. 1320, 2022.
Do you want to say it again? What did I say?
Something quite different.
I motion that council adopt District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1320 and 2022.
And a seconder? Councillor Mafty. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries. Thank you. We have two reports today. 6.1, skate park lighting project. Ms. Fortune is not here to present this. But I believe Ms. Monteith is going to speak on her behalf.
Thank you, through the mayor. Yes, Abby is at home ill today, but I understand she's available on Zoom if any specific questions come up at the end of this report. So this report is in regards to the skate park lighting project. As mentioned in the report, in 2019, council at the time brought this idea forward. It was placed in the 5-year financial plan, and taxes in the amount of $56,000 was collected for it. And then the pandemic came. So here we are. So now the project is coming in at 25% higher, and thus we would require more funds to do this particular project. At the same time, we're in the middle of a budget cycle with a new council, and council's been hearing a lot about rising costs and inflation and added pressure on services and skyrocketing interest rates on our soon-to-be water treatment plant. So as we move through the budget process and try to minimize the tax implications on property and business owners, staff are starting to look at projects such as these to see whether or not they're a want or a need. If it's funded by tax dollars, can we reallocate those funds elsewhere and apply for a grant instead? And whether or not projects are still viable when you compare the cost versus the benefit. So that kind of thing. And unfortunately, this project is the first of potentially several that council may need to consider over the next 2 months during the budget process. So, and in addition to the increased costs, staff were just wondering about how many more hours would this provide to the users of the skate park. So we know for 5 months a year, on average, it's drier. You get about 14 to 16 hours of daylight. We have a noise bylaw that starts at 10 o'clock in the evening. So in September, when sun sets at 9, you're really only maybe gaining another hour of time. And then the other 7 months of the year, statistics show that it rains for more than 15 days in those months. So half the time it's wet. Yes, it's darker earlier, but we're just, we weren't sure about that. And we also have a very successful indoor skateboard program at the Rec Hall during the off season, which is, has a variety of programs, and some of them are open to all ages. As well, we're seeing quite a few vans and campers during tourist season, just kind of parking endlessly at the skate park, so we have to keep up with bylaw as well. So for those kinds of reasons, we thought it would be prudent to just bring it back to new council and get an opinion or a decision from you. Ultimately, option A is to defer the project until we can find a grant opportunity, which is typically easier when it comes to children and youth. This way it would free up $56,000 of taxes that were already collected that we could apply to something else during the budget process that council, of course, would have to approve. However, option B would allow the project to move forward this year if we use extra funds from the recreation infrastructure and facilities reserves. But the potential downside of that is you're probably going to have to cut something maybe somewhere else. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Councillor Kennington, we'll start with you.
Yeah, you figured. I'd just like to know if we don't move forward with this, where that $56,000 would go. Skateboarding's a massive win for the youth in our town. And I'd like to see that money, if it is going to be deferred to something else, that it still be related to the skateboard park, because that was a promise that people were waiting on. So I reached out to a couple of skateboarders, and they're open to the idea, but there's other things at the skate park that might be more beneficial to them than lighting. A new quarter pipe at the top to make that L-shaped bank more usable. So if we can sort of earmark those funds to the skate park, I don't think you'll see any opposition in the community.
Ms. Monty?
Through the mayor, absolutely. Staff actually considered whether or not council would prefer that it stay either related to the skate park or in relation to a recreation program in general. That's council's decision to make, and we can certainly do that we could do that today, or we can do it through the budget process. We're just trying to free up this year's tax dollars so that we don't have to make it quite as high, but we can certainly do that. I know there's some conversation about expansion of the skate park. Maybe that's something that comes up in your strategic planning sessions where you talk about that, and maybe it's a bigger package item that we apply for a grant for as well in the future.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councillor Anderson?
Through the mayor. I asked around as well with some folks, and it seems like, as you're saying, that 15 days, out of the month are probably wet. The other idea was, to possibly have like a covering on part of the park up there. But a couple of people also mentioned, just when I walked out there was a couple of kids, and they said like that it would be nice to have some lights by the basketball area as well, because there's kids playing and it was getting dark and they were kind of bummed out. So I was like, all right, be a good idea too. But yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. Councillor Hoare?
I know lights at the basketball court have been also, it was basketball and skate that we were ideally looking for. And I understand earmarking it for some expansion to the park, but we do need, it's a tough one. But there are grants out there for youth projects, as Ms. Monteith says. And I think that maybe we do have to just wait until we can get a little bit of a bump, because costs are so high right now. And I think if you do the cost benefit on the lighting, it would be worth it to delay this one a little bit. That's
if I may.
We have
We have
Fortune.
the Director of Parks and Recreation, Miss Abby Fortune, on the line here. Go ahead, Miss Fortune.
Thank you very much, through the mayor. Thank you for all your comments. I appreciate your thoughts and understanding. We're part of 2023, we'll be reviewing the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And I think these are all really strong comments and areas that we can look at. And as Ms. Monteith pointed out, it's a lot easier to get grants for children and youth programs. But I think an overall big picture is also really important for council through the strategic plan. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Fortune. Any other comments from council? Councillor Anderson?
So through the mayor, was the 25% increase, is that reflected in that price for what I would assume would be the winning bid for 70,000 approximately? Was that with the 25% increase? Does that include that, or is it 25% above that?
The lowest bidder came in at 25% higher than the 56,000 that we've collected. So the project is 25% higher than it was estimated back in 2019.
So that 14, that extra was a 25. Okay,
Correct,
I get it.
yeah.
I get it. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Mafty?
I just want to chime in to say that my kids love the skate park. I go to the skate park all the time. I think I might represent a different demographic of use. We're rarely there after dark. But having said that, I think the skate park, it's a community asset, and it's something that I think all of us are really proud of. Under the circumstances, I'm not opposed to deferring this project, and I definitely agree that we should be careful that if we do that, the money doesn't just sort of disappear to something else. Like, people are invested in the skate park, and I think that if we're gonna raise money and set aside money for the park, it should go to the park. But this particular project, I'd be inclined to defer it myself, in large part just because of the financial implications of doing that right now, and what seems like a decent chance of doing at least as good a job or better in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, did you have something to add?
I guess the question is can you do both? I mean, if that money's earmarked for the skate park, but do you have to relinquish that and then wait of the possibility that a grant comes up that works perfectly for the shovel-ready situation? Is it one or the other, I guess, is my question.
My suggestion through the mayor, is if council chooses to defer the project and to wait for a grant to come up, that would give us the opportunity to take that 56,000 and apply it to this year. You would have the ability maybe not to cut something else that's going to come before you. It might be something related to recreation, or it could be something related to a different area of the district. But I believe that chasing a grant for this is a lot easier than you don't get grants for operations. You get grants for things like this. And I think we became very, very close last year with participation. So maybe we have to try a little harder this year. More working out, yeah. But I think it's feasible.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Monteith. There is a staff recommendation. Oh, one more comment. Councillor Kennington?
Was there any thought given to staging the project to basically use up the 56 so that it's not deteriorating from inflation and at least get some bollard lights on one section through the pump track?
Ms. Monteith?
That might be a question for Ms. Fortune. I would assume because we're remote, the cost of mobilizing a project like this, it's sort of an all or nothing, but I would ask maybe Ms. Fortune to chime in on that.
Ms.
Certainly.
Fortune?
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor. We haven't necessarily broken it down, but the way it is set up is what they're recommending is 6 lights in order to properly light the space. Both proponents have recommended that. And it's not really something that we can necessarily phase in at this point in time.
Thank you.
Councillor Anderson?
And through the mayor, a question for Abby. Is there a prerequisite for this to be solar? I think that's what it mentions. I'm wondering first of all, I'm wondering if we get enough light. Season to run solar. I'm sure that's already been determined, but is that a necessity? And is that, if there was a less expensive way to do it outside of solar, would that be an option?
Through the mayor, that's a good question. Yes, it has been determined that we're okay in terms of the sunlight, and actually the solar comes in a little cheaper. The Dayco installation they're only a solar company, so they came in at $70. As you can see before you, the 134 through Ridgeline Mechanical was their solar cost. And their non-solar cost was $110. So it's still a significant amount above what we originally budgeted for when we were looking at the project originally.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Monteith, during the budget process, could there be a discussion about this 56,000 wrapped in there so it doesn't just sort of vanish?
Yes, there will definitely be discussion about the 56,000 because the only recommendation we're looking for today is to defer the project until a grant becomes available. So council has and will need to be involved in deciding what happens to the 56.
Great, thank you. If there's no further questions, could I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Got it?
Councillor Kennington?
I'll move that council direct staff to defer the skateboard lighting project until grant funding becomes available to fund the project.
And a seconder? Councillor Mafty, any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. Thank you, that was a good discussion. The next report is item 6.2, temporary use permit, 1861 Peninsula Road. This report is provided by the planning assistant, Ms. Whitney Brown. Welcome.
Good evening. Yes, this is a temporary use permit application. It's actually a renewal, 2213, and it's to renew an existing temporary use permit, which allows residential staff accommodation for Ucluelet Harbor Seafoods at the Thornton Motel, located at 1861 Peninsula. You can see on the map just there. So the applicant applied for and received a temporary use permit for this use in 2019. And so they have a permit to use up to 17 units for UHS employee housing. And the permit included a number of conditions which have been included again in the renewed permit in front of you. And these include safety conditions and some other ones. They also completed, since 2019, kitchen renovation to add a kitchen and ancillary space, community use space there for the employees. And there are also a couple additional conditions added to that permit in front of you, which would require an updated fire inspection. So there's, you can go to the next slide. You can see there the motel. There's been no bylaw complaints since the permit was issued in 2019. And over the span of that 3 years, there's been no related complaints. So granting of this renewal would allow the applicant to continue to operate the residential staff accommodation on the property for an additional 3-year term, so until 2026. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this point, and council, of course, should give an opportunity for the applicant, who I believe is here, to provide any information.
Thank you. Any initial questions from council? I have one that maybe the applicant could answer, just with regard to the 17 units. Are they always consistently being utilized, or do employees sort of come and go? And just curious, Mr. Dawson, if you could just step to the microphone. Okay. Perfect. Just your name and address, please.
Christian Sampson, 1310 Allen, through the mayor. We do have the units filled about 6 to 9 months out of the year for our fishing season. But when they are empty, we do offer them to the community. Just last year, we offered them to community members that were teachers in the community that so happened that they had a fire and they were without housing. So we can provide housing for people in the community if that so happens. It happened to one of our employees as well over in Mill Stream, where it so happened that she had a fire as well. So when the units are empty, we do like to fill them with other members of the community.
That's good information. Thank you for that. And you're the on-site manager?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Any questions for Mr. Sampson? Councillor Mafty?
Through the mayor, I just have a very general question, just out of curiosity. How does it work in terms of your operations? Is this like a functional long-term solution for you guys, or is this just making the best of a tight housing market? Like, is it good, or is this sort of the best you can manage?
Typically, it would be better if we had our own properties that we could manage full-time, because right now we do have multiple properties in town, and it's very, very hard to find housing for all of our employees. We house about 50% of our employees with various houses, and the motel is our biggest one. The best would be to have a singular area where we can have all our employees, all our staff together. Would be ideal if we could find a property like that.
We need you to speak to a microphone because of the Zoom peeps out there.
Dave Dawson, General Manager of Pacific Seafoods here in Canada. We have about 50% employment right now at UHS, 50% fill rate. We'd probably double our work staff if we could find some more housing in town, or develop some more housing, or find a piece of land to put something on. The Thornton right now is a very important piece of housing for our office. It's without it, I don't think we'd be operating this year. In all seriousness, yes.
That's good to know. And what percentage of your workers are foreign workers right now?
50%.
50%.
It varies because they're on a 6-month on 181-day permit. So, and we stage them. So that we bring in 20 here and then 20 next month and 20 next month, and so it's sometimes we've only got 20 foreign workers, and a majority made up from Port Alberni and Ucluelet. And then as it grows, we find it's not an easy job for the people riding the bus from Port Alberni, so they sort of fall off showing up every day for work, and then it's the temporary foreign workers make up a majority of our workforce.
Right. And so the foreign workers, I assume, would start out at the Thornton and then look for their own housing, or is it
Well, they're
just-
only here for 181 days, so they stay at the Thornton the whole time.
Right.
And then rotate out. We just don't bring them in. As you know, the fishing season starts. It's a bit slow, so we'll bring in a handful of them and then build to the summer when the fishing's much stronger, and then taper off at the end. But Ucluelet Harbor Seafoods has turned into a 10-month-a-year plant. When I first took over the business in 2015, we were a 6-month-a-year plant. We'd shut down for 6. Now we're shutting down for 6 to 8 weeks for R&M, and that's it. We truck a lot of fish from French Creek. Since September 27th, I know the first landing, we've trucked 14 million pounds of fish across the island for processing at UHS. I think we're bringing a lot of work into town that way. We did about 97% of the Gulf hake through Ucluelet this year. So and that's allowed us to keep the workforce longer and spread them out and keep them, and the locals as well, the people from Port Alberni and people from Ucluelet, to make money year round.
That's great. I would love to arrange a tour for council of your
Anytime,
plant.
yeah. You'd like
Maybe
to come to the plant, and then maybe one day when our freezer boat's in, we do have the Pacific Legacy, which is an at-sea freezer processor. You're more than welcome to come through there too. It's a pretty state-of-the-art vessel. It's one of the only 2 vessels in the world with a freezing system like it.
Interesting.
When you guys come and have the tour, we'll get the engineer to explain it to you.
Yeah.
Our field school did a tour of the plant a couple years ago, and it was incredible. I've walked past and seen the outside of that every single day, many times a day, but to go inside and to see the operation and to appreciate how many people are actually working, even on what we were told was like an average day, it was an eye-opener, and it was really
Anytime
fascinating.
you guys want to make arrangements through Christian and Greg Hardy, who is our operations manager there, he'd more than happy to bring you through.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Any other questions from council? I see there is a recommendation. Would council like to make a motion?
I got it. Oh, Mark, do you want to do it? Go for it.
Just like now it's not recognizing my thumbprint.
Okay. Because I totally approve of this. Having worked at UHS when I was working for Archipelago, it is quite something. So I'm all for having a tour because I haven't seen it for 10 years, I guess. I will move that council, subject to public comment, authorize the Director of Community Planning to execute and renew temporary use permit 19-06 as amended to allow residential and seasonal accommodation for a period of 3 years from January 2023 through December 2025 in the Thornton Motel located at 1861 Peninsula Road.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. Any notices of motion? Nope. Okay, there are 3 correspondence items today. We can just go through them quickly because there's only 3. The BC Reconciliation Award. Anyone want to discuss that? I see the deadline for that is January 20th in case someone has a project to push forward. 8.2 Winter 2023 Oceans Protection Plan Dialogue Forum from Transport Canada. Jennifer, are you interested in attending the online version of that?
Oops.
Okay. 8.3 Aquaculture Update from DFO NetPen Transition Plan Engagement Follow-Up Session. Councillor Anderson, you attended one of these a couple of months ago.
That's right. Yeah. So.
Are you interested in the follow-up? Or have you had enough?
No. No, I actually signed up for that. It's next Monday, I think. So I already signed up for it through Cecilia. So.
Oh, yeah, it's January 16th. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. Anyone else want to discuss any of those 3 items?
If you're busy for the oceans protection one, I can jump in on that too.
Yeah, I just need to confirm with my boss about that because that's taking days off 2 weeks in a row, which he's not very happy about. But he's planning to retire sometime eventually, so that's keep me happy in the meantime.
Okay, so moving on to information items. There is one item today. It's a thank you letter from Ardent Properties to do with the Ridge Crosswalk painting. And they've included a picture as well. We can thank them for their thank you if you like. Okay. So, council committee reports. Councillor Anderson.
I have nothing to report at this time.
And Councillor Hoare.
Where were all of you on New Year's Day for the dip at Little Beach? Come on. I was the only one there. Well, and Miss Fortune, who obviously now has cold, so. So rang in the new year that way, which is a nice way to wash the last year off. Last week I had a meeting, the Wild Pacific Trail Society met, and they're starting to gear up their education program, looking towards Whale Fest. They're looking to hire another person to help with programming over the summer. And some new signage, which is always exciting. I love getting a pre-look at those. They had the stats for the year for the donation boxes, and not surprisingly, this past year was higher than either 2020 or 2021 for obvious, lockdown reasons. What's interesting is we haven't got up to the levels of 2019 yet. So at least not with people dropping their coinage into the boxes, but we're getting there. So which is good because that means more money for projects and more trail building and watch out for an opening because there's a new part of the trail that Oyster Jim's been working on that's pretty darn close to being opened off the Artist's Loop. So we can all get excited about that.
I think that one contains a crow's nest as well, does it not?
Yes, it does. I don't know quite what he's calling it. We've been referring to it as the crow's nest, but I have a feeling he's got I don't know if he's calling that one the crow's nest or the osprey nest, or he wasn't present at the meeting, so we couldn't bug him for that.
Any questions for Councillor Hoare? Thank you. Councillor Kennington.
Nothing to report at this time.
Councillor Mafty.
There's 2 pieces of information that are of possible tangential relevance. The first is that for a number of years, the Rain Coast Education Society has worked with the University of Victoria Department of Geography that hosts a field semester out here. They're based in Tofino, but the scope of the curriculum focuses on issues of regional importance. I don't necessarily know that there'll be any opportunities for the students to work with the council or the municipal government, but they're very keen on how things work. And if there's interest from the instructors in the course, I thought it might be worth suggesting that they could come and sit in on a council meeting or track one of us down to get perspective on what issues in the community that the council's focused on might be. It's a good opportunity for them. They're usually really keen, and they spend a decent chunk of time working with community partners towards tangible goals that benefit the community. So it's really nice to see them back. I And then this is, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to mention this, but at our last meeting, we discussed a letter from the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust that was looking for a liaison. I just sort of, like in a casual encounter, was talking to Rebecca Hurwitz, who sent the letter. At that meeting, I had suggested that I would be interested in that liaison position, but was worried about potential conflict of interest. It doesn't sound like that's something to worry about. So I know we're supposed to follow up in the next little bit, and I'd be super keen to fill that position unless anybody else wants it, because I'm familiar with what they do, and I think it'd be a good fit.
Thank you. We don't have our CAO here to guide us in that process, but we'll touch bases with him tomorrow, I guess, and just figure
Throwing
that
it
out.
out there.
Yeah. Okay, for myself, December 14th, I was at the ACRD in Port Alberni. There was a morning orientation with protective services and the fire services, and then the council meeting, or the board meeting, sorry, was in the afternoon. I guess the highlight of that meeting that would affect us involves the Long Beach Airport Land Use and Development Plan. The directors approved a 2-year term position for an airport project coordinator. The board also directed staff to submit a grant application for the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program for the Long Beach Airport Land Use and Development Plan project. There's a lot of interest in the airport lands, and so they really want to do a comprehensive study of what could and should not be out there. And at that same meeting, the board approved the signing of a 3-year memorandum of understanding between the Tloquet First Nation and the ACRD. This will allow the parties to develop an agreement for the Long Beach Airport and provide $27,500 in annual funding to the Tloquet to achieve the objectives of the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. And the board also approved updating the airport fees bylaw to increase passenger fees from $5.50 to $7.50, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's going to cover that $27,500, apparently. And so this has to do with the Tloquet coming forward last year, wanting consideration for the fact that the airport is on their traditional territory, and that it was taken away from them during the war, and it was promised to be given back to them after the war, and that didn't happen. So this is to get an understanding between the two parties that the Tloquet may want a presence at the airport. And the best news at that meeting, the board supported staff in undertaking an alternative option study for public transit on the West Coast with a budget of $12,500. And so that's, they are hiring Watt Consulting Group, WATT, to do an alternative option study for transportation, because of course the BC Transit has stalled out on us for providing that bus service that they promised us back in 2018. So this will be an interesting study, and the ACRD is putting $12,500 toward that to make that happen. It won't be a fast process, but it will be interesting. And then on December 21st, I was back in Port Alberni again at the ACRD for the board meeting, and I guess the most interesting part of that one was the board awarded the Long Beach Airport fence construction and installation contract to Hazelwood Construction Services in the amount of $2,805,347, excluding GST. And this project is 100% grant funded, and the construction project will further support wildlife and airport safety at the Long Beach Airport. There was lots of other things discussed, but those are kind of the highlights that affect us here on the West Coast. Any questions for me? Councillor Hoare.
I'm curious whether the announcement that the is it Wilson Transport was not going to run the bus for the spring. Was that out prior to the discussion of the alternate transport options and study?
Well, it was Wilson Transport did say probably back in September that they were going to cancel the service January 1st. I don't think it got a lot of attention until it actually stopped January 1st, which is always the way. But this is like a triple whammy because Wheels for Wellness also stopped coming to the coast January 1st. So we've got BC Transit, Wheels for Wellness, and now Tofino Bus all
not running
out the window. So I did speak with our MLA, Josie Osborne, last Thursday to talk about these issues. And her office is going to look into all three things for us. So hopefully they can come up with something. The provincial government may have to subsidize Tofino Bus just to have them running for a couple of months until another option can come up. It would have to be a one-time thing. It couldn't be the government isn't in the business of loaning private businesses money, but there needs to be transportation options on the West Coast. So, and Gord Johns, our MP, has also written a very strong letter supporting the fact that we need transportation on the West Coast and in fact all rural and remote communities. So we have some heavy hitters kind of going to bat for us.
Yay.
Kennington?
The Wheels for Wellness, are we involved in that in any way, or is that sort of separate? Is it Island Health, or is it a funding issue? Is it a driver issue? What happened?
It's privately owned, and it is partly subsidized by the health authority, Island Health. But it's a two-part problem, a lack of ridership, a lack of usage, and a lack of volunteer drivers. So the owner back in October wanted to shut it down then. Marcy DeWitt from the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network talked him into a 3-month extension because it's the transportation action table that she talked about that actually brought Wheels for Wellness here to the coast. And so again, Josie Osborne is going to look into what can be done to help get that back working for us. And I think the owner was not very good at promoting it locally. He lives in Courtenay on the other side of the island, and the service has been running all over the island except for the West Coast for many years. And the Transportation Action Table finally got it here in 2018. And so it's really sad to lose it now. So hopefully we can find a way to bring it back, because if in case people don't know what Wheels for Wellness does, it transports patients to their medical appointments, whether it be Victoria, Nanaimo, Port Alberni. The only thing they don't do is transport people from Ucluelet to Tofino or vice versa. The distance is not great enough. They have a rule around that. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I know a couple of volunteer drivers who don't mind driving, but
yeah, it's a lack of ridership or usage as well.
I have that meeting with Marcy on Thursday, so I can bring that up with her as well.
Yeah, Marcy's been in discussion with me and Josie Osborne, but yeah, do bring it up because we need all hands on deck to try and get these situations resolved. Okay, question period. This is an opportunity for the public to ask questions and provide comments on items that have been addressed on today's agenda. Items not related to today's agenda will not be heard. Are there any questions from the audience? Our one audience member says no. Are there any questions by Zoom or telephone?
There are no hands raised on Zoom and no one calling in at this time.
And have we received any questions via email to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
We have received one email to Community Input. The subject line reads Agenda Item 6.1, and I'll read the email. To Mayor and Council, Happy New Year. I wanted to write this email after reading the report 6.1 on your agenda package. 5 years ago, I met with our community's youth and talked to them about programming and asked them about why they loved Ucluelet and what would make it even better for them. The number one ask, skate park lights. So this was brought up numerous times and budgeted. While I understand cost increases, this job was budgeted years ago and our children have been patiently waiting. Outdoor recreation is important for our teens. Honestly, after our children reach 13 years of age, recreation programs, if your child is not interested in team sports, is minimal. This project should have been completed years ago when it was budgeted, and to see this come up again and now be deferred is frustrating. Let's listen to our kids. Regards, Lara Kemps, 301 Marine Drive.
Thank you. She's probably the one that put it forward to the budget process when she was on council. There are no other emails?
There are no other emails.
Okay. I will call this meeting adjourned at 5:11.
I did send a note to